Yo, I'm back. I've finished my read-through of the Dragon Ball Super manga, which is kinda gas, by the way. Today I'm covering the beginning of the manga up to the end of the Universe 6 Tournament of Destroyers, ranking every single fighter from S tier all the way down to F tier. If they don't make it to F tier, they don't get a mention. As always, this is a manga-only ranking, where I'll take guidebooks and external statements as secondary sources. Because Super adds a ton of ultra-powerful gods and angels, I'll be excluding them from the ranking to avoid bloat, and keep the top 3 tiers open to actual characters that we care about. This is the first in a series of ranking videos covering each major arc of the Dragon Ball Super manga. There is an accompanying series covering OG Dragon Ball coming out alongside this one, and the 21st Budokai ranking is already out, which you should definitely take a look at after you watch this video. If you'd like to see those vids when they come out, consider subscribing. Only 3% of you watching this video are actually subscribed, which is kinda like if I was Frieza on Namek and I was nerfing myself to fight on level with base Goku, instead of immediately dusting him and moving on with my life. With all of that said, let's get into the rankings. The first few placements are for Legacy Z characters that are present in the story but are clearly below the relevant characters in the manga. That's what gets Android 18 into the lowest tier of the ranking and the only F tier character. At this point, she is still likely head and shoulders above the human cast, but hasn't been shown to grow beyond her Android Saga self in power. 17th place. E tier is for characters that might not be relevant, but they are definitely stronger than F tier characters. Goten and Trunks shouldn't be any weaker than their Buu Saga selves, which are on level with a rusty Gohan from the beginning of that saga. Way stronger than what 18 should be at, but not enough to really matter yet. Wait for the superhero ranking. I think you'll hate what I have to say about these two. Cell owns D tier through the fact that he's a solid Super Saiyan 2 tier fighter from the Z era, which is enough for a tier placement above Goten and Trunks. We see him in Goku's image training, by the way. That's how he makes it here. 14th place. C tier is where we start to see characters that really matter. These guys would be powerful forces in the Buu Saga and could beat a majority of Z era characters without too much trouble. Before we get into the C tier characters, I think we need to discuss Goku's power in his non-god forms. Goku doesn't have God Keen base in the manga. Other mortal characters can consistently sense him when he's not in god forms. Additionally, we never see him drop out of Super Saiyan God against Beerus and continue fighting him, which is important because we never get the statement that his base got a massive amp post-ritual like we did in the movies and anime. Maybe he can enter a Saiyan Beyond God-like state, but it's never been shown that his base got an exponential boost after the ritual. This is important because it reduces some of the power creep that might exist in the anime adaptation of Super. Goku's still a beast without his god forms. Even before the ritual, he was supposedly competitive with Kid Buu in just Super Saiyan 1, and was more impressive to Beerus as a Super Saiyan 3 than Gohan and Gotenks were. He's had a ton of high-quality training with Whis since then, but I would be hesitant in comparing his base normal ki to his Super Saiyan God state from Battle of Gods. Still, at bare minimum, he's been getting possibly the best training one could get in the entire universe. If he grew 19 times stronger under King Kai, then he should hypothetically be getting a way bigger amp after multiple years with Whis. However, with no actual quantifiable proof of his gains, we're just gonna say Goku is stronger than he was pre-ritual to some unknown degree. Otamo is not quite in C tier, he's more of a C-, but his durability is so broken that I didn't feel right putting him any lower in the ranking. Physically, he's garbage, with base Goku being able to bully him repeatedly, to the point that he could dodge blasts from Otamo without even looking. Otamo's just really freaking durable. Vegeta doubts that Goku could harm him as a Super Saiyan, and doubts that Goku could beat him with an all-out attack as a Super Saiyan Blue, with Whis even noting that Goku's method of wringing out Otamo to be the only way that he could have beaten him. In a life or death battle, there's not much anyone can do to him at this point, when it comes to physically damaging him. Unfortunately for Otamo, there isn't much he can do to his opponents either. He was able to knock back a casual Goku who just overate, but that's kinda it. Against stronger opponents, it becomes this weird stalemate where they might be able to knock him around, but they're not going to be damaging him, and they'll eventually wear out. In that respect, he's kinda like Hei's Shenron from GT. That said, in a life or death battle, there's nothing stopping stronger characters from throwing him into outer space or even using certain hacks, like sealing or transmutation, to pull off a win that way. A durability merchant through and through, Otamo actually has a lot of unrealized Megami if he just put any effort into training his actual combat abilities. 13th place. In C tier proper, we have Piccolo. While it might not be readily apparent, Piccolo has eclipsed his previous peak from the Buu Saga and is reaching the upper tiers of power from Z-era Dragon Ball. He fought surprisingly well against a tired Frost, someone that forced Goku to go Super Saiyan and take him seriously when he was at full power. While Goku did think that Piccolo stood no chance against even this tired Frost, Piccolo actually went on to, well, he didn't prove him wrong, but he did impress Goku with his performance. He was still at a disadvantage against Frost, but he was competitive enough to continue tiring him out, forcing Frost to put in effort and resort to using his poison needle instead of straight up overpowering Piccolo in their fight. This performance against Frost, as well as Piccolo's own hacks and battle IQ, gives the impression of a genuinely impressive fighter by immortal standards. Unfortunately, we are also implicitly shown that Piccolo sits below a peak Ultimate Gohan and Fat Buu in terms of power at this point through Vegeta's treatment of Piccolo. Vegeta would rather have Gohan on the team over Piccolo, when he thought that Gohan hadn't fallen off as badly as he did, and later lost his mind when Buu was disqualified from the tournament. In contrast, Vegeta actively told Piccolo to drop out of the tournament so he could have a go at Frost, despite that reducing their active fighters even further, which he crashed out over when Buu was removed from the roster. At this point in the series, Piccolo shouldn't be incomparable to these Buu Saga Super Saiyan 3 level characters, but even after his respectable showing against Frost, Vegeta was fine kicking him to the curb. Right above Piccolo, we have Mr. Buu. He shouldn't be any different from the version of him that we saw from the Buu Saga, who went toe-to-toe with Kid Buu for an extended period of time after getting freed from Super Buu. I am personally of the belief that the Good Buu we see post Super Buu is very different in terms of power from the version of Good Buu that we see get fodderized by Evil Buu. He did way better against Kid Buu than he did against Evil Buu, despite Evil Buu likely being one of the weakest versions of Buu and Kid Buu being a decent bit stronger than Innocent Buu. That's not that important for Buu's placement in the ranking, but it is a good bit of context for where the other people above and below Buu would rank in the Buu Saga. Most importantly for Buu's ranking is Vegeta's crash out over Buu's elimination compared to him forcing Piccolo to give up. Additionally, Buu being Goku's first choice for the tournament, with him treating it as a no-brainer, while Piccolo was the second mention, gives the impression that Piccolo has yet to surpass Buu, a great precursor to the top 10. The next three guys are closer to a C+ than a straight-up C tier, those being Kid Buu, and Gotenks and Gohan from the Battle of God's Arc. At this point, Gohan can still go Ultimate, and Goten and Trunks likely aren't any weaker than they were from the Buu Saga. Gotenks can beat Super Buu, who Buu Saga Goku thought he had no chance against, and Kid Buu was beating Super Saiyan 3 Goku without too much trouble on his end. Formerly sitting near the top of the verse, they now barely crack the top 10, and are basically relics of a bygone era. Their purpose in this ranking is to show you who cracks the ceiling of the Buu Saga. The next character is the start of our B tier. These guys are reaching levels of power that are surpassing every Z character, with the exception of possibly Vegeta. Frost earns his 7th place spot through his fight with Super Saiyan Goku. He was losing this fight, decisively, actually, but he could still react to, clash with, and push back Goku at various points in the fight. He wasn't incomparable to Goku here, just clearly outclassed. Now, am I going to say that this Goku is 19 times stronger than the version of himself from before the ritual that he thought could fight Kid Buu as a Super Saiyan? Maybe. Even if we completely lowball Goku's training gains under Whis, the math heavily favors Frost completely outclassing the original Z-era ceiling, with the exception of a fully serious Vegito, of course. With multiple years of elite training under an angel, Goku's standard Super Saiyan 1 form is operating at a level that more than likely scales right next to or even above a powerhouse like Buhan. Because Frost can actively track Goku's movements, trade blows, and force him to exert real effort before getting overwhelmed, Frost's power is at a level that is too much for any non-fused Z character to deal with. Frost also isn't just limited to the basic fighter toolkit though. His poison needles are really strong. They can knock out fighters as strong as Super Saiyan 1 Goku, and they're so small that you need to have absurd visual prowess to see them. Even Champa and Beerus had no idea what was going on. While Frost does later get obliterated by Vegeta, he's exhausted at this point, having gotten his ass kicked by Goku and then worn down by Piccolo. Frost exists as a benchmark for what it takes to be a relevant threat in the post-Super Saiyan God era. 7th place. Cabba's strength has been a bit of a meme in the Dragon Ball community, and sometimes even a source of controversy. I think the manga somewhat circumvents this controversy by avoiding the Super Saiyan God level and base statement. But even without that bone from Toei, Cabba's nuts. Vegeta thinks Cabba is his equal base to base before finding out that he can't go Super Saiyan. There's no reason Vegeta would be blowing smoke up his ass at this point, so the praise should be genuine. When Cabba does actually go Super Saiyan, he manages to nullify a blast from Super Saiyan Vegeta and scrap with him for a bit before Vegeta explicitly calls his power impressive. We also don't get that weird scene of Vegeta just randomly tanking a punch from Cabba, so there's really no anti-feats here. He scales to Vegeta broski, and if he scales to Vegeta as a Super Saiyan, then he beats Frost as badly as Goku was beating him, and even better because he'd know that Frost has the needle if they were to fight. This lets Cabba settle in at 6th place, with the unfortunate caveat that the Cabba from the manga is not beating Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta in base. Auto Magetta, the freak of nature that pushed Super Saiyan 1 Vegeta to the point that he started shouting insults at his opponent like it was a 2014 COD lobby, is 5th in our ranking. Magetta is honestly min-maxed to hell. His durability and striking strength are off the charts, with base Vegeta hurting his fist after punching him, struggling to harm him even as a Super Saiyan, and getting sent reeling by a punch from Magetta. It's to the point that Vegeta's gasping for air and saying that it's no use against Magetta no matter how many times he attacks him. A freak of nature. At the same time, Magetta's kinda slow as shit. Base Vegeta dodged attacks from him with some difficulty, and aside from the one hit Magetta landed on Vegeta when he was trying to lift him, he could not touch him when Vegeta went Super Saiyan. His Lava Spit is likely faster, as it could intercept blasts from Vegeta, but if we're talking his striking speed, kinda mid. He also can't fly and is weak to insults, which anyone who's been to the Tournament of Destroyers would know about. Still, Vegeta would rather destroy the ground under Magetta's feet than fight him directly, which is way more than could be said for anyone else from Universe 6, aside from one guy, B+. This might be a surprise for those of you familiar with the manga, as we never see the events of the Resurrection F arc take place there, but we do see Frieza in Hell in a chapter end card and hear about the ROF arc enough to make a good estimate on Frieza's strength, and that estimation places him at 4th place. As an aside, I do know that the ROF movie was adapted into a 3-chapter promotional manga. I've seen some people fold that in with the Dragon Ball Super manga continuity, but I lean towards it being its own thing, closer to the Dragon Ball Z movie continuity instead of a direct interpretation of the events for the Super manga. I say all that, but those events probably played out almost exactly as they did in the movie. Frieza required the strength of Goku and Vegeta's Super Saiyan Blue forms to take down, and while this isn't their current level of power that we've seen from them in the Tournament of Destroyers, Frieza being on level with, or very likely stronger than, Super Saiyan Blues from a past arc places him far above the rest of the verse at this point, to the extent that he owns A tier. Alright, we are now at S tier proper, the true elites of the verse, not counting Gods of Destruction and Angels. Hit, the strongest fighter from Universe 6, is the 3rd strongest character of the verse at this point. His suppressed level of power is pretty impressive, being capable of beating a sub 10% Super Saiyan Blue Vegeta into the ground, and while being inferior to Super Saiyan God Goku, he was still able to stay on his feet after taking multiple attacks from him. We then see Hit power up to his full power, which was substantial enough to shock Goku, Vegeta, Champa, and even Beerus to Gods of Destruction. At this point, Hit at the very least closed the gap in power between himself and God Goku, enough to use time skip on him, but as we see moments later, a full power Super Saiyan Blue Goku is still strong enough to break through the time skip, and that's pretty damning for Hit. Unlike in the anime, Hit can't just randomly improve his abilities mid-fight, he just stopped holding back in the manga, and his ceiling is provably below that of a full power Super Saiyan Blue. Still, he isn't so weak that he's helpless against Goku, being able to dodge Goku's Kamehameha that was juiced up enough to blow a hole through Vados' barrier. Given the no-killing rule, Hit should have been able to survive this barrier breaking Kamehameha. And also, because of this no-killing rule, Hit couldn't use certain techniques in the tournament. We don't know these techniques, but they supposedly make him way more lethal of a fighter. Still, given Goku's vast superiority over Hit as a Super Saiyan Blue, I'm not sure that these unknown techniques would close the gap meaningfully enough to place him above Goku or even Vegeta. Speaking of Vegeta, he's number 2 in the ranking. You might be questioning this given his embarrassing loss to a casual Hit, but let me remind you that Vegeta was below 10% of his full power and certifiably below Super Saiyan God level at this point. We see later on what a full power Super Saiyan Blue can do to Hit, and Vegeta is treated as Goku's equal during this arc. In a non-tournament setting, Vegeta has no reason to hold out on going blue and is likely going to treat Hit as badly as Goku did him. And unlike Hit's hidden assassin techniques, we know for a fact that Vegeta has the power to tear through Hit. Goku even pushed the Vegeta agenda after his fight. That said, Vegeta isn't perfect. His battle IQ in particular during this arc is kinda bad, and he makes a few questionable decisions, from not letting Piccolo see the Tournament of Destroyers through so he could humiliate Frost, to going Super Saiyan Blue against Kaba just to show off and, I quote, set him on the right path, going Super Saiyan 2, or God would have had the same effect, to not even thinking of throwing Gautama out of the ring when he was watching Goku fight him. His singular IQ feat this arc was trying to destroy the ring under Magetta's feet, and that plan only worked because he accidentally exploited Magetta's weakness to insults. Vegeta still possesses an incredible amount of power for this point in the story, as much as Goku, but he's provably a worse fighter than him at this point. Goku is number 1 in the ranking, something I haven't been able to say since the Namek Saga ranking video. On paper, he's identical to Vegeta, but his battle IQ is just a solid 5 points higher. He actually figured out that he had to throw Gautama out of the ring. He adapts to Hit's time skip after 3 exchanges, which is just insane if you think about it. and he properly paces himself during that fight to not gas out, unlike a certain someone. His single battle IQ failure during the arc is suggesting that Vegeta throw Vegeta out of the ring, and that was a choice made on incomplete information regarding Vegeta's mass. Not much else needs said. He decisively had hit dead to rights before he forfeited, and showed us why he's the GOAT throughout the entire tournament. And that's the ranking. The tier list is up now for a more comprehensive view of how this first part of Super shakes out. The manga at this point is actually really good. I think it's paced a little too quickly, and it feels very much like a complementary piece to the anime instead of its own standalone story at this point, especially with it skipping the ROF arc. But that said, the power creep isn't as gross as it is in the anime, which I really vibe with. Avoiding the Super Saiyan God power and base statement makes everything a little more easy to swallow. Like sure, Cabba's still nuts, but he only ever becomes absurd after unlocking Super Saiyan. Frost only caps at Saga top tiers instead of soloing Z with no difficulty in just his first form. Hit, a 1,000-year-old plus being, is the only actual Super Saiyan God level character from Universe 6 at this point in the story. It all just feels far more believable and grounded, at least in comparison to the Super anime. Anyway, I should have the Red Ribbon Army arc ranking out at some point within the next 2-ish weeks, unless I decide to make something else. But yeah, no, like and sub if you haven't. See ya.